Happy Saturday. Happy Saturday. Let's get into it. We got quite a bit going on in the world. Um, Fascinating things that we've heard about what's happening with crypto regarding what's going on in the Middle East, as well as Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent making some statements this past week that will definitely have an impact on the future of the US dollar and its standing on the global stage. We're going to break down things like the dollar milkshake theory. We're going to talk about why what Scott Besson just did might be contrary to that idea and dive a little bit deeper into also just an update on what's happening with this conflict and what this means for you and your money. So, welcome in, everybody. I'm Keith D. You already know what we're here to do. And as always, I also want to make sure that you guys hear a quick word from the sponsor of this live stream, who is our friends over at Caleb and Brown. So Caleb and Brown is a crypto brokerage, full service crypto brokerage, one of the only ones in the game that do this, where you get to actually talk to a broker when you are making decisions about what you want to do with your cryptocurrency, whether you want to buy, whether you want to sell, all of that. What I recommend for you is if you're interested in any way, I want you to actually sign up for a free account, it's totally free. And then you can verify your account. Oops. And then once you verify your account, you'll be able to get in touch with a broker over there at Caleb and Brown. Let me get you guys the link to that. Yeah, welcome in. Hit that like button on the way in. Appreciate you all for being here on this beautiful Saturday day. And yes, so link is in the chat box to go ahead and check out Caleb and Brown. Sign up for a free account. It's totally free. Verify yourself. Get in touch with a broker. Just learn about their services. I also recommend that you guys get in touch with Jim Bazzani. His email will be in the description of this video here. And he will also chat with you to talk about what the offerings are at Caleb and Brown. But with all of that said, let's move into the topic for the day because we've got some tensions heating up. Tensions are heating up, folks. Finally caught me live, Darkwing XRP. Well, what up? What took you so long? What took you so long? I've been going live for a minute. So first things first, we have had apparently China letting their citizens know that they should leave Iran as soon as possible, warning of a complex and volatile situation. China had actually issued this same warning on February 27th, one day before the US and Israel started the war. Okay. So that's going on. All right. That is not a good sign. Honestly, when I saw that yesterday, I was expecting to wake up to something again because usually, these Saturdays are when these things occur. Right. Yep. Welcome in MB4551. Said, I'm here. I'm early. I'm here to learn. A lot of questions too, hoping to gain some knowledge. Thank you for educating us and spreading awareness. We'll come back with some questions. Yeah, always. What up, Steve? Rupert, what's up? Robert J. Davis, Old Man, and Old Man Odin. Good afternoon. What's going on, everybody? Welcome in. Welcome in. So that's the first thing that I wanted to make sure that you guys were aware of. Another thing that happened over this past week is the Trump administration. Oh, they don't want me to read this. They reportedly froze $344 million in crypto allegedly linked to Iran. So Tether, I believe is what it was. Let me actually get this right for you guys. So there was a $344 million USD Tether freeze that occurred, and this was linked to the U.S. economic fury against the Iranian regime. So Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent actually said the U.S. is seeking to choke off all financial lifelines for the regime, including stablecoins. So as we saw towards the beginning of this conflict, right, Iran, once they closed off the Strait of Hormuz, what did they say? They said, if you're going to come through the Strait of Hormuz, we would like for you to pay us a toll. And that toll to be potentially paid in Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies. We know for a fact that the Iranian regime has used Tether for getting around U.S. sanctions in the past, as well as using Bitcoin to send money to their proxy groups around the world. AB Elamin, love you too, man. Appreciate you for pulling up. Um, so yeah. So, anyways, so as this has gone on, apparently the US is catching on to this and they're saying, look here, we're not having that with when it comes to Tether because of the fact that Tether and a lot of these stablecoin issuers that we're looking at are custodial stablecoins. There are usually contracts, smart contracts that are linked to the issuance of these tokens that allows them to be frozen. So yes, blockchain, decentralized currency, yes, blockchain, um, totally permissionless thing. But in reality, when it comes to stablecoins, that is not necessarily the case. So, just something to keep in mind here. This is a very, very important thing to understand about what is about to happen here because as we've been talking about this entire time, this conversation is going to continue to dig into um, crypto, right? We're going to continue to see this actually have an impact on crypto as well as just crypto being a part of the story. So, yeah, just want you guys to see that because it is going to continue to come up, I imagine. So I'm going to go ahead and read out what they have actually said here about this for you guys. So um, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said, under economic fury, U.S. Treasury will continue to systematically degrade Tehran's ability to generate, move, and repatriate funds. Treasury's Office of Foreign Assets Control is sanctioning multiple wallets tied to Iran, resulting in the freeze of $344 million in crypto. We will follow the money that Tehran is desperately attempting to move outside the country and target all financial lifelines tied to the regime. So here we are. So this article goes into how authorities said Iran has increasingly turned to crypto to bypass restrictions using more complex transaction patterns to obscure its involvement in cross-border payments and support trade flows under sanctions pressure. Treasury's OFAC is trying to turn up the pressure by moving aggressively against both the traditional front companies and the use of digital assets, the official said. Meanwhile, it sanctioned a petrochemical refinery on Friday, accusing the China based independent refineries of playing a major role in Iran's oil economy. Interesting. Just trying to get a better understanding of that one. And the US agency said it will continue to work with blockchain analytics firms and maintains coordination with financial institutions, including crypto exchanges, as it tracks illicit flows tied to sanctioned entities. Incredible to see that that's what's going on here, everybody. So keep that on your radar. And it does tie into another thing that Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has actually brought up in the past 48. And so the other piece of what has occurred here, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent came out and said discussions with countries, including our Gulf and Asian allies, about US dollar swap lines are part of an ongoing routine conversation that the US Treasury has been having with our partners over a number of years. They are a testament to the US dollar's primacy and strength of America's economic shield. Now, he's announcing here additional swap lines can benefit our nation by reinforcing dollar usage and liquidity internationally, maintaining smooth functioning in dollar funding markets, promoting trade and investment with the United States, and in hypothetical stress scenarios, preventing disorderly sales of US assets as well as disruptions to the US markets, businesses, and households. We're going to break this down in just a second. Many of the countries have pristine sovereign balance sheets that have large dollar holdings, larger than any major economies with whom we maintain permanent swap facilities. I applaud our allies' foresight and watchful risk management by exploring additional financial buffers during periods of market quiescence. Now, extending permanent swap lines can be a major first step in creating new US dollar funding centers in the Gulf and Asia. Dollar dominance and reserve currency status are strengthened by constant long-term initiatives, including countering the growth of problematic alternative payment systems. Okay, so what on earth is he talking about? What is going on here? Let me break a little bit of this down. The dollar is the world's reserve currency, right? Trade that takes place in countries that don't even involve the US takes place using the US dollar. Okay, there's a disproportionate amount of trade that happens in the world in US dollars. The US doesn't even have to be involved. And so, because of that, there's a very high demand for US dollars. Now, there are times when US dollars are not as easy to come by, and there are shortages of dollars, especially when times essentially are getting rough inside of a country. And so what can happen is imagine that a currency that's not the US dollar starts devaluing against the US dollar. And so these countries actually need even more US dollars if they were to have debts in US dollars. If you have a debt in a currency and the strength of that currency or the value of that currency rises versus your currency, then you actually owe even more than you did before, just based off of the fluctuation of the value of the currency itself. And so now you're really, really in higher demand for US dollars because you need to pay off your US dollar debts. And so what happens is you get to the point to where, okay, I have a massive shortage of US dollars. How am I possibly going to get my hands on them? I can't print them. Okay, so what happens is the US will create what are called these swap lines. And these swap lines are essentially where the US stands up a facility, just imagine a bank account or whatever you want to call it, where they are going to swap US dollars, for instance, for euros. Okay, so they're both swapping euros for dollars. So you get my dollars, I get your euros because you need my dollars right now. So I've stood up a swap line where we can now trade currencies. And so these swap lines are typically, not always, sometimes they're permanent, but typically not necessarily a permanent thing. It's that there's a huge spike in the demand for dollars or a huge shortage of dollars. And so we set up these swap lines so that a country can get through whatever it is that they need to get through. And so in that occurrence, um, it goes away over time. But when you have a permanent swap line, what this essentially means is that you'll never really have a shortage of dollars. You'll always be able to get dollars because you have these swap lines that are permanent facilities where you can just print your own money, swap it, and get US dollars in return. So let's see what some other people have been saying about this because this has generated a lot of traction. As you can see, a million views on this, and honestly, it's a pretty interesting statement. He's saying that essentially um, they're looking to create new funding centers in the Gulf and Asia. Once again, he says dollar dominance and reserve currency status are strengthened by constant long term initiatives, including countering the growth of problematic alternative payment systems. So, if we've been paying attention to this, what do we call it, to this conflict that's been occurring in the Middle East, one of the biggest things has been the use of an alternative payment system in order to be able to get uh, payments for traveling through the Strait of Hormuz. Iran said that they would accept yuan was the very first thing that happened, and then it was crypto, right? So hopefully you're seeing how this ties back into that conversation. But Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is saying, "Oh, we can't have people using these other alternative payment systems. You need to be using the U.S. dollar." Okay, so we're going to create these swap lines and we're going to make them permanent so that people in the Gulf and in Asia are not using uh, Russian ruble or Chinese yuan or crypto or whatever else in order to do this. Now, the interesting thing, as we all know around here, is also the stablecoin situation, right? So, uh, the fact that the U.S. has actually frozen Tether from Iran essentially makes a statement as well around what's possible there. So it's clear that stablecoins are not necessarily a clear way around the US sanctions. So to be fair, I think that is a huge, huge promotion for other crypto assets such as Bitcoin and any other ones. Okay. We saw some legislation coming out over this past week. We talked about that on Memes and Markets, how we've got Japan is moving forward on some legislation. Russia is moving forward on some legislation. And something that was really odd about the legislation in Russia was that they basically said that it would be not legal. This isn't fully passed yet, but they're saying it would not be legal to use crypto to have transactions in the country, right? You can't use it to pay for things, but what you could use it for is to send money across borders. You could use it to send money across borders. Okay, so that's a very fascinating thing that they would delineate those two different use cases of cryptocurrency, specifically saying if you want to send money across borders, then yeah, that's totally fine, and that's one of the major uses of cryptocurrency in specific blockchains that you and I all know about as well. So, diving deeper into what Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent's statement was here, let's look at what some of the people were saying on X. Essentially, so Kashyap Sriram, Shriram, he said, "Goodbye, dollar milkshake theory." In the movie Minority Report, Tom Cruise is part of a team which prevents crime before it can happen. Fed swap lines being expanded to cover all US allies, non allied countries, have already de dollarized their economies, prevents funding stresses before they become funding stresses. So, once again, shortages of dollars arise from time to time, and that makes debts really tough to pay, and so on and so forth. And so, what do? You create a swap line where the country who needs these dollars can essentially print their own money and swap it for US dollars with the Fed in the United States. So, what he's saying is look, setting up these swap lines before there is some massive issue feels a lot like the Minority Report, where pre crime, right, is kind of happening pre problem. You've created these facilities, and let's dive into what he thinks that means. Therefore, there will never be any sucking of liquidity from the global financial system into the US dollar, even in a severe crisis, which means the dollar will lose its safe haven bid in times of stress. Because we'll watch a full video on the dollar milkshake theory, but generally, the idea of the dollar milkshake theory is that you've got, imagine, everybody around the world, when things get tough or when things are getting hard, when markets are going down, what do? They sell the things that they have, and they typically will go out and buy US dollars or US treasuries. Okay, they want to get their hands on a currency that they feel is going to be more stable and that is also likely to strengthen in the time when everyone else is trying to get their hands on a stable currency, right? So the dollar milkshake theory is essentially just that as things get rough, all of the liquidity in the world goes back into US dollars. Right now, that's assuming that the US dollar maintains its reserve currency status. Okay. So let me move forward here with what he's saying because I just want to make sure we are logically breaking this all down. So, what he's saying is look, therefore, if you've got these swap lines in place, then there will never be any sucking of liquidity from the global financial system into the US dollars, even in a severe crisis, because they would always have access to these US dollars, which means the dollar will lose its safe haven bid and in time of stress. And when he says that, I'm imagining that he's saying the actual value of the Dixie, right, or the value of the US dollar on the global stage doesn't have to go up in a time of stress. Let's keep reading. If the world is short dollars and the Fed supplies them, there's no consequence to being short dollars. You're actually encouraged to use dollars for carry trades, much like Abenomics did to the Japanese yen. The eventual outcome is the dollar becoming more of a transactional currency and less of a store of value. This is great news for Asians. It means the end of permanent currency depreciation, making local equities more attractive relative to US assets. Pair high growth rates and favorable demographics with currency stability, and you have the perfect setup for an emerging market resurgence. The Treasury Secretary does not understand the long-term implications of this empire-ending move. Now, let's talk about that. Let's talk about that. Because what did we hear from Stephen Myron before he was in the Fed? They did this Mar-a-Lago Accord. And a part of the thing that they were talking about is trying to manage this reserve currency status of the United States dollar, right? Maintaining the strength of the dollar, but really, really trying to remain the world reserve currency. But what I think what we're having to delineate here is the difference between the dollar serving as a reserve asset and it's serving as a transactional layer base standard. Okay, because Those are two different functions, but it has always served since the 70s in both in one. Both, you take any excess money that you have and you invest it into US treasuries or into the US stock market, which means you need US dollars. And you use this US dollar to go out and do trade on the global stage. You use it to buy your oil, which is why, right, by the way, you have this excess of dollars that you might invest into US treasuries and stocks and so on. So this is kind of how I'm looking at this. It's an interesting conversation here. And some people do disagree with this take. So Robert P. Balin said, if the world is short dollars and the Fed supplies them, there is no consequence to being short dollars. So he's quoting him here. You're actually encouraged to use dollars for carry trades, much like Abenomics did to the Japanese yen. And then he's now is providing his input saying, big logical error here, conflating dollar scarcity with dollar strength. If the goal is a currency that facilitates universal exchange, the right framework is elastic, credible liquidity provision during stress. Exactly what Fed swap lines deliver. Romanticizing funding crises and painful shortages as the source of dollar power is backwards. They make it unreliable. Swaps make it stronger. So Robert's idea here is that actually this is what would make and solidify the US dollar as the reserve currency. Because what happens is now when people need dollars, guess what? They will have them and then they will use them. So it's an interesting conversation to have there about this concept. And what I wanted to take this time to actually do with you all is to go over this concept of the dollar milkshake theory, because that is the piece of this that is helpful in understanding this conversation, although I broke it down a little bit. This video here from Real Vision does an even better job. It's only a few minutes. So let me pull this up on my screen and then we'll chat a little bit about that after we watch it.
A giant milkshake of liquidity has been created by global central banks, with the dollar as its key ingredient. But if the dollar moves higher, this milkshake will be sucked into the US, creating a vicious spiral that could quickly destabilize financial markets. The US dollar is the bedrock of the world's financial system. It greases the wheels of global commerce and exchange. The availability of dollars, cost of dollars, and the level of the dollar itself each can have an outsized impact on economies and investment opportunities. But more important than the absolute level or availability of dollars is the rate of change in the level of the dollar. If the level of the dollar moves too quickly, and particularly if the level rises too fast, then problems start popping up all over the place. And that's why everyone should have a plan for a rapidly rising dollar. It doesn't need to be a base case, but it never hurts to be prepared. Today, however, many people are convinced that both the role of the dollar is diminishing and that the level of the dollar will only decline. People think that the US is printing so many dollars that the world will be awash with the greenback, causing the value of the dollar to fall. Now, it's true that the US is printing a lot of dollars, but other countries are also printing their own currencies in similar amounts. So in theory, it should even out in terms of value. But the hidden issue is the difference in demand. Remember, the global financial system is built on the US dollar, which means even if they don't want them, everybody still needs them. And if you need something, you don't really have much choice. And although many countries like China are trying to reduce their reliance on dollar transactions, this will be a very slow transition. In the meantime, the risks of a currency or sovereign debt crisis continue to rise. For now, countries like China and Japan need dollars to buy copper from Australia. So the Chinese and the Japanese want dollars, and Australia is getting paid in dollars. Europe and Asia currently do a very limited amount of non-dollar transactions for oil. So they still need dollars to buy oil from Saudi. And again, dollars get hoovered up on both sides. Asia and Europe need dollars to buy soybeans from Brazil. This pulls in yet more dollars. Everybody needs dollars for trade invoices, central bank currency reserves, and servicing massive cross-border dollar-denominated debts of governments and corporations outside of the USA. And the dollar-denominated debt is key. If they don't service their debts or walk away from their dollar debts, their funding costs rise, putting great financial pressure on their domestic economies. Not only that, it can lead to a credit contraction and a rapid tightening of dollar supply. And the US is happy with the reliance on the greenback. They own the settlement system which benefits the US banks, who process all the dollars and act as gatekeepers to the dollar system. They police and control the access to the system, which benefits the US military machine, where defense spending is in excess of any other country. So naturally, the US benefits from the massive volumes of dollar usage. And other countries have naturally been grumbling about being held hostage to the situation. But their choices are limited. What it does mean is that dollars need to be constantly sucked out of the USA because other countries all over the world need them to do business. And of course, the more people there are who need and want those dollars, the more is the pressure for the price of dollars to go up. In fact, global demand is so high that the supply of dollars is just not enough to keep up, even with the US continually printing money. And this is why we haven't seen consistently rising US inflation despite so many QE and stimulus programs since the global financial crisis in 2008. But the real risk comes when other economies start to slow down or when the US starts to grow relative to the other economies. If there is relatively less economic activity elsewhere in the world, then there are fewer dollars in global circulation for others to use in their daily business. And of course, if there are fewer in circulation, the price goes up as people chase that dwindling source of dollars, which is terrible for countries that are slowing down because just when they are suffering economically, they still need to pay for many goods in dollars and they still need to service their debts, which of course are often in dollars too. And so the vortex begins, or as we like to say, the dollar milkshake. As the level of the dollar rises, the rest of the world needs to print more and more of its own currency to then convert to dollars to pay for goods and to service its dollar debt. This means that the dollar just keeps on rising. In response, many countries will be forced to devalue their own currencies. So of course, the dollar rises again. And this puts a huge strain on the global system. To make matters worse, in this environment, the US looks like an attractive safe haven. So the US ends up sucking in the capital from the rest of the world. The dollar rises again. Pretty soon, you have a full-scale sovereign bond and currency crisis. We're now into that final napalm run that sees the dollar and dollar assets accelerate even higher. And this completely undermines global markets. Central banks try to prevent the disorderly move, but the global markets are bigger and the momentum unstoppable once it takes hold. And that is the risk that very few people see coming, but that everyone should have a hedge against. When the US sucks up the dollar milkshake, bad things are going to happen. Worst of all, there's no alternatives. What are you going to do? Yuan? Yen? The euro? Now, like it or not, we're stuck with the dollar, underpinning the global financial system. And that's why we all need to pay very special attention to the dollar milkshake theory.
So, with all of that said, let's also take a little bit of a look back at Stephen Myron's Mar-a-Lago Accord. Okay, so from a quick Google search, the major thing that the U.S. is trying to, or that Stephen Myron was publishing about trying to accomplish, is reindustrializing the United States, but maintaining the reserve currency status of the US dollar. So these swap lines, once again, these swap lines are coming in as a source of dollars when demand is higher, when there's a shortage of the supply, rather. So you can still get access to dollars, if you use the swap line. Okay, cool. Now, what one of those guys was arguing is that, well, that means that you never really need to go out into the market to buy dollars. Therefore, the strength of the dollar is not going to be there. And it won't be a reserve currency anymore. But one of the things that Stephen Myron talked about in the Mar-a-Lago Accord is looking to find a way to devalue the dollar. Why? Because a strong dollar means expensive exports. And if you have expensive exports, then it's going to be really hard to properly reindustrialize. It means that there won't be as much of a demand for your goods. People won't buy them if the prices are too high. And so you want to devalue the dollar in order to have your exports be cheaper to everyone else on the global stage. And so, could part of what the US Secretary of Treasury actually wants is a cheaper dollar? And could that be what they're doing with these swap lines? So, here's the thing, right? They want to have a cheaper dollar, but they don't necessarily want to lose the reserve currency status. So, how could you accomplish that? How could you accomplish that? Maybe by offering these swap lines that allow people to access the dollars, but that also creating more of a flood of the supply of the dollars that keeps the value of it dwindling. And listen, I'm not an expert on these swap lines or the mechanics of how that works, but I'm just trying to draw connections to the plans that have been basically revealed to us beforehand and how this is continuing to play out. So there has been a lot of talk about how in Iran, they're kind of like one of the more independent central banks, right? They're not as tied into the Western system. And so trying to find ways to prevent them from circumventing SWIFT and other Western payments methods is one of those things that we have to keep an eye on. So Kelly White said, "This is the first time I've heard of this. Was it discussed during this week's Memes and Markets live streams? If you're talking about the dollar milkshake theory, it was not. It was not. This is something that I started thinking about here as I saw what Scott Besson did, I believe, yesterday. For those of you who don't know, we go live on Memes and Markets every Tuesday and Thursday at 12 p.m. Eastern. We've been having some crazy cool guests over there. So definitely hit the subscribe button over on Memes and Markets in the description of this video. But in general, right, this is the conversation at the moment is having these swap lines being permanent swap lines that Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is saying in the Gulf and Asia, will that lead to essentially cheaper dollars, but maintaining the reserve currency status? And then we also can talk about the stablecoin thing as well, right? Scott Bessent has been very vocal about stablecoins being this thing that are going to be used to maintain the strength of the reserve currency status of the United States. So it's an interesting thing because once again, we're seeing a reason for people to not use stablecoins in terms of the fact that they can be frozen. But then again, maybe you start to issue these swap lines or whatever eventually, right, in these blockchain types of mechanisms. I don't know. It's definitely an interesting use case when you think about things like the XRPL. If you had a way to just have a constant swap line from any currency to another that moves on chain, maybe not permissionless, but something that is 24/7 cheap and at least a lot easier to maintain without having to maintain a centralized database to facilitate those types of transactions. I don't know. That's just something that just came into my mind. The tokenization of all of these fiat currencies is something that we're definitely going to see with Europe, for instance. They're very much so moving towards their central bank digital currency and their digital euro. We've seen the digital pound making a lot of movement as well. Maybe not as vocal about everything that they're doing, but definitely something to keep an eye on there as well. So let's look at some of the other responses that we saw to that. Simon Dixon, everybody's got their opinions on Simon Dixon. Here's what he said. Translation: if you sell your bonds and shares, US markets break. We'd rather take your currency as collateral and print more dollars. It's our only choice as we burden Americans with more debt. We need to extract as much value from stocks and bonds for the transnational financial industrial complex whilst we can. So basically this, right? If people need to get their hands on dollars and they have assets in US stock markets and US bonds, then they would have to sell those stocks and bonds in order to get those dollars. So if there's a shortage of dollars, then people need to take a risk off and go into the dollar. And so what he's saying, what Simon Dixon's pointing out is, look, what's Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent saying? No, 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 no. Don't sell anything. Don't worry. We will provide you U.S. dollars through these swap lines. Don't freak out. We got you. And so that is an interesting take for sure as well on that situation. But yeah, so I just wanted everyone to be aware that that was something that started to take place and to have a little bit of context around this concept of swap lines to the best that I could explain it. I'm not an expert at all of that and what that may mean for the future of the dollar in general. So that's pretty much what I wanted to update you guys on today, as well as what's happening with Iran, right? Because that situation, by the way, is not getting any better. We saw Lufthansa, the fourth largest airline in the world, canceling 20,000 flights over this week. Not something that's like worth scoffing at. At the end of the day, this is happening. This is occurring. You don't have to freak out about it. I'm just letting you guys know. The Strait of Hormuz has not necessarily been opened up in any capacity. They're not having peace talks. They've extended their ceasefire at least, which is great. I genuinely am very happy to see that. But the situation with the Strait of Hormuz is not necessarily getting any better. And so, with that being said, we are very likely to see oil prices, urea prices, gas prices continuing to hike up. I mean, look, like I said, I'm not someone who's overly deep into looking at the data on what this really is going to mean, but so far, right, no crazy impacts, which is a great thing to see. It's just a matter of, can things continue this way? We're just going to have to see. The pressure of the rises of the prices of gas and oil is not something that's easy. So it's not like, as it is, everything's fantastic, right? There's already some issues that are continuing to come in, and the longer that happens, the longer we're going to have more structural types of problems that will take place, and the longer it's going to take for things to actually get back to normal. But as mentioned, luckily, nothing too crazy has happened just yet. So, so no peace deal, no peace talks even this weekend, unfortunately. So what I'm going to do here now is I'm going to come back to the sponsor of this live, and then we are going to go into a Q&A, and then we will call it a day. So Caleb and Brown, as I've mentioned to you guys, is a brokerage, full service crypto brokerage that I've partnered up with. You guys can actually sign up for a free account with Caleb and Brown and verify your account. Make sure that you go through the process. They're going to email you and tell you to verify everything, give them your ID, all of that. I just put the link in the chat box. Sign up for a free account. Once you do that, you'll be able to actually have someone that you can speak to about your digital assets journey. A lot of people are asking me like, oh, but if I buy and sell and this and that, or do I, why would I buy here if I have a hardware wallet? Why would you ever use a centralized exchange? Guys, you use the centralized exchange to purchase. And to be honest with you guys, Caleb and Brown has one of the best institutional grade custody solutions when it comes to your centralized exchanges. So it's always nice to have in place several different exchanges that you can buy and sell and store and so on. So that's just kind of how I look at that. I'm always going to be diversified in the way that I manage that. And I love Caleb and Brown. I've gotten some good feedback from you guys about Caleb and Brown as well. So totally recommend that you guys just sign up for an account with them. And yeah, when you guys are ready to buy or sell or whatever you guys want to do, you've got another exchange that you can use, and you can actually have someone that you can speak to about making your decisions as well. So check that out. There's also the link in the description of this video where you can find that, but you can also see that in the chat. So with that said, everybody, what's up? Talk to me about the things that you're seeing in the world, or any questions that you may have. Super curious to hear those things. Let's see. Yeah, so I saw that U.S. President Trump cancels Witkoff and Kushner's trip to Pakistan. Daily Iran News has said they're saying that the war restarting is imminent, but I don't know that there's like some deadline on the ceasefire just yet. I don't think that that's something that's happened. The other thing I guess I wanted you guys to definitely know for sure is about memes and markets. So memes and markets, guys, is going up. It's continuing to be fantastic. We've had an amazing time growing this podcast. and having you guys with us. I know a lot of your names here. We appreciate you always being around. Memes and Markets is a live podcast that I do with Ben Levitt, and we go live every Tuesday and Thursday at 12 p.m. Eastern. If you have still yet to check out Memes and Markets, I'm just gonna say it flat out: you're tripping. You're tripping. Just check it out. The link is in the description of this video to go and subscribe and actually join us live, because that is a big, big, big part of the experience. And we've been having some great guests on. We had Zachary Faust on. We had Emmett Smith and his son on. We had Asian Dad Energy. We had Peter Diamandis. We've had Jeff Booth on the podcast. We've had Andy Schefman, who I'm sure a lot of you guys know, on the podcast, and Charles Hoskinson a few weeks ago. I guess it was over a month ago that we had on the podcast. So, guys, Clive Thompson, who I know a lot of you guys listen to, look, he came on the podcast. Jake Claver came on the podcast. Good Evening Crypto Abs came on the podcast. If you haven't subscribed to Memes and Markets, you know that you're missing out. So go ahead and check us out. Hit that subscribe button and join us live on Tuesday and Thursday at 12 p.m. Eastern. We also have some incredible guests coming up there as well. But yeah, guys, so that's pretty much my update for today. Let's see. Andrew SS, it sounds like you said probably how much do I walk per video? I don't know. That's an interesting one. Andrew SS, doesn't the Middle East also have the easiest pathway to produce BTC? I saw something specifically around Iran having like cheaper energy that they're able to use. I think it has something to do with like hydropower, and they've been using that to mine Bitcoin. I do seriously think that there's some crazy stuff that's going to happen out of this conflict regarding crypto, but we'll see how it all actually goes down. So let's see what else you guys got going on. Kelly White, US U3S says, do you have any thoughts as we move into earnings season? I really don't at this point. I'm just going to be honest with you. What we've continued to see in the stock market is that no matter what is happening, the market is just going up. I guess if you're seeing positive earnings, then that would be a reason for markets to continue to rise. But I really don't have any major thoughts. I'm not someone who spends a whole lot of time looking at the individual stocks. Let's see. Yeah. P Smooth Jones asked, how many miles do you walk during your videos? No, I actually don't know. I should take track of that. I think that's an interesting question. I have no idea. I'm usually walking for like 20 minutes, right? So 10, 20 minutes. Let's see what else you got. Wesley said, or Wes said, when are they gonna take digital currency serious, Keith? That's a good question. I think right now could be one of those times. I mean, we're already seeing the fact that we're seeing the OFAC, the Office of Foreign Assets Control, like take these types of actions, and it just being like a normal thing. That $344 million of Tether was just seized in the middle of a war. Like, that's crazy. That's crazy, but that's just a headline that's occurring at the moment. And at the end of the day, it just shows that to some extent they are taking it seriously. And then from there, it just comes down to the rest of the volatile assets outside of the stablecoin world. And if there were a way for Iran to start using more volatile cryptocurrencies as a way around the US dollar, then obviously it becomes a real concern at that point, does it not? So there's that. Let's see what else you guys got for me here. Steve Rupert, I see there was trouble with WLFI, World Liberty Fi. What does its impact have on DeFi in general? Yeah, there was an issue there. And I mean, there's also even bigger issues that have occurred over the past few weeks here. We've had some massive hacks of some of larger DeFi protocols. I would say that's probably the thing that's really had a massive impact because of the collateral that gets shifted in those types of times when you have these massive hacks, so yeah, that's the thing that I am mostly thinking about as well. But yeah, I mean, look, the craziest part about all of that is, of course, that's coming from the president and his family itself, which is a really unfortunate situation that's how that's going down. But the Justin Sun drama, he's like suing them now and saying they cheated me. Meanwhile, he kind of invested in the project in the first place, trying to get some political favors and so on. But just the idea that any of that investment could have been happening to create political favors is wild. But I mean, that's not outside of the realm of what's probably realistic here. We saw a lot of stuff with the Middle East also investing in some of the crypto projects and so on. Um, when it comes to DeFi, though, and the impact that the trouble with the world of DeFi financial thing has on DeFi in general, I mean, yeah, I think the bigger thing has been the impact of these smart contract platforms getting hacked. And the crazy thing about all of that is the way that it's being done, because these aren't like your traditional just um, like brute force kind of attacks on the smart contracts themselves. These are attacks where there are people that are devising long term, like 6 month plus year long plans to get inside of these organizations and then ship malicious code. Okay. So that's really where the real concern is in DeFi, is whether or not there are state actors that are facilitating people getting into these organizations and sabotaging them to some degree. Um, but in general, I mean, it's not a good look to have what happened with World Liberty 5 for the DeFi space. What they essentially did, by the way, was they kind of like minted their own token. With that token, they gave their buddy, they put that token, the World Liberty 5 token, up as collateral on their buddy's platform. One of the advisors or people who works with World Liberty Fi has his own liquidity pool and decentralized exchange. And that decentralized exchange um, is where they put these funds up, and then they borrowed stablecoins off of their World Liberty Fi tokens. And so when they did that, it did a couple of things. One, obviously, it made their friend probably some money. But the other thing was that they basically borrowed the maximum amount of stablecoins that could have possibly been borrowed. And when they did that, anybody who had lent their stablecoins had no way of being able to redeem them. And this was where people were upset, because if I'm lending and trying to earn on my stablecoins, but I just all of a sudden can't withdraw if I would like, then I've kind of been duped a little bit. I kind of got stuck in this protocol, and until they return those stablecoins back to that liquidity pool where they borrowed them from, then those people who deposit won't be able to withdraw. And so that was kind of where the real, how would I say, controversy, I think, came from. But also the fact that they were using World Liberty Fi tokens that were their own. And when you put up any asset as collateral and you borrow off of that thing, you are essentially short that thing. And so another piece of that is them doing that nefarious type of a thing obviously creates sell pressure on the World Liberty Fi token. They're like, yo, I don't want nothing to do with this project. They're doing all this funny business. So that does actually also decrease the price of the World Liberty Fi token. So that's also something that people were having to deal with. And then that could also lead to a cascade of liquidations where, look, they don't really care if the World Liberty Fi token gets liquidated because they've borrowed the stable coins. So they've basically shorted their own token. Once again, because I've said I'm going to borrow off of my collateral. And if that collateral goes to zero, they didn't pay for that collateral. They minted that collateral. They created it out of thin air. So they don't mind if it goes to zero. They didn't pay for it. But they just got 100 million, 300 million, whatever it was in stable coins. And that's just free money. So people were like, wait a minute, you've synthetically gone short this asset that we have invested into. Okay. So that's kind of the controversy around that. I mean, if anything, Steve, it just shows the importance of understanding the tokenomics of these ecosystems. Because if you've got 20, 30% locked up or given to the founders of the project, maybe that's not, maybe it's even more than that for World Liberty Fi, you would probably know a lot longer ago that this wasn't something to put your money into. I totally myself never told anybody to touch that thing. I didn't even look at the tokenomics. You kind of know what you're dealing with. But and the thing for me is what they were doing just also didn't necessarily really make sense. Okay. Like, what are they actually doing other than being a name? You know what I mean? If they're not doing anything, you got to think about, I mean, we've seen this over and over again. If you go back to 2017, if you go back to 2021, there were so many people that raised millions and millions and millions of dollars in the name of what? In the name of I'm a celebrity, in the name of I'm going to build this thing, and all this vaporware. And this was really nothing different. It's just like a DAO, I guess, and they raised a bunch of money, and it's like, let us invest money for you. I don't even know. I didn't even look at it. Honestly, I really didn't, because it just, I knew that they weren't doing anything of any significance in the space. So if you're going to be investing and playing around with these DeFi protocols, one, understand what it is that they're doing in order for you to actually generate some returns. Secondly, understand what are the tokenomics behind the whole situation, because otherwise you might just be throwing your money into a pit. Anyways, I'll move on from that, but hopefully that was helpful. It's just at least how I'm looking at it. Jay Heron said that the dollar will get much weaker soon. Crosshatch Polymarket good bet is Kay Starmer will resign before May, guaranteed. Interesting there. Blessings to you, John 316. Appreciate you. Teo 3655. So during this vortex, the best way to protect yourself is to stay liquid in cash and physical assets and hold off on the accumulation of crypto. You're talking about in the dollar milkshake theory scenario. Yeah, and to be fair, right? Like, so the guy who's popularized this concept is called Brent Johnson, and he's awesome, great guy. Highly recommend listening to him. He has a whole podcast called, I believe, the Dollar Milkshake Theory, and he has a fund called Santiago Capital. And so Brent Johnson, he's a guy who's popularized this idea that when things get rough, the dollar goes up, everything else would essentially suffer versus the US dollar. Now, I mean, the question is, right, he's been talking about this for a very long time, and I'm not refuting that this is what it is or how it will go down, but it's just a matter of what happens in between, right? You have a scenario like that, and do stocks continue to rally for 10 more years? Does Bitcoin and crypto catch massive bids and change the whole monetary system, period, because of the way that it all works? So it's not that. What my point is the dollar milkshake theory is a theory. But yes, you're correct. In that theory, if it were to play out the way that he's saying, then the best way to protect yourself would be to have dollars and things that are outside of the dollar system, such as gold and silver. So, yeah. So let's see. Jay Heron, big Bitcoin mining companies are selling like crazy. It now costs $65,000 to mine 1 Bitcoin. Gen Z Boomer said we'll hit like after watching. Well, whenever you feel comfortable. John 316 says I'm walking right now. What up? What up? I am not walking right now. I'm gonna be walking later though. 226, the end of the milkshake video, he said the US dollar would still be on top, correct? Oof, I really don't know for sure what he said at the end of the video. Might have to watch it back. Might have to run it back. Oh, Ben Levitt pulled up. Hold on, let me catch up to the chat. Oh, yeah, I'm way behind on the chat again. What? That's crazy. What up, Ben? Let me catch up to the chat real quick. Denari Guerrero, Keith, what is your take on foreign currency investment? Look. If you have wealth that you're trying to protect, it can make sense to look at foreign currency investment. But to be clear, when I hear that, I get concerned because I've seen so many scams. Guys, around. I don't even want to name it because I don't want people to get upset with me. But like, the only currencies that I would invest in as a hedge against the US dollar, any foreign currencies, would be the euro or the Japanese yen or something. Maybe if there were just a reason why. But like, yeah, I just you also want to think about, when you're thinking about foreign currency investment, when are you going to use that currency? Because the point isn't just to try to make money, right? If you're going to hedge a foreign currency exchange, you want to think about being able to use that currency. And that's why I say the euro, because where would you go if things were going bad in the United States? You might not necessarily go to Europe, but you might. you might want to be somewhere like that, or and then vice versa. They might want to be somewhere like here. You want to make sure like currency is something that has utility, right? It's not, as we all know here, it's not necessarily a store of value. It's not. So, Denere Guerrero, just be careful when you're seeing people promoting that. Like, it's not a way to make money. It's a way to have safety, right? Like you invest in foreign currency when you have multiple passports and you have bank accounts in several different countries because you're going to go there and you're going to use that currency. It's not as much of an FX risk when there's something that you can do with it. You can buy property with that money that's sitting in a foreign currency. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's just kind of my take on that. Let me try to catch up to the chat. Okay, so another thing that came through is um, Jay Heron has got some ideas on astrology. Interesting, interesting. Uh, Crosshatch 34, wild time to be alive. I agree. I agree. Cryptonomics 7 said, in terms of functionality, smart contracts do not exist. What do you mean by that? Timoth US Cloud. Any real reason you don't allow closed caption on any of your outputs? I honestly don't even know what that means. I'm not even gonna lie. I'm just gonna be real with you. What up, Sharp 24/7 Academy? What up? Okay, Teo. Okay, no. All right, all right, all right. Sharp 24/7 Academy said, y'all anticipate Tuesday's Eminem stream guest announced on X. Yeah, definitely follow us on X, everybody. Shout out to Ben Levitt in the chat. I'm just now properly catching up. Heard all the cool people like keep these streams. Yeah, you gotta hit the like button. Come on. Teo3655, Keith, is there a time frame for when this milkshake theory potentially forces a reset? Is it a 2 to 3 year time thing? I mean, Brent Johnson's been talking about this for a long time. You know what I mean? I've been talking about it for a minute. You know what I mean? Like at least 2020, maybe a little bit earlier than that. That he was like out in public speaking about it. That is because he probably has been talking about it for a while. So it's not like I don't know if it's a time frame thing. I think it's more of like a event thing, right? You can't really anticipate when something is going to happen in terms of if you need a prior event to occur, kind of like the domino theory thing. Like, I don't know when necessarily the Japanese central bank is going to hike interest rates, but when they do, right, that becomes the trigger for the next domino to fall, as an example. So I think it's more like that, my guy. There's no telling. Teo3655 said, Ben Wagwan Mayut. I still don't even know what that stuff means, but shout out to the Canadians and the Toronto slang. Let's see what else we got. S5Q1 said, hey, your thumbnail catfish me into thinking you'd be walking outside. I'm so sorry. Live streams are not outside. Yeah. At least not yet. Maybe one day we'll do a walk and talk outside. I wonder how that would perform, actually. Maybe we'll do that. E. Hernandez said, this is not a guy walking in the park talking to a stick. Should I listen to him? I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Kelly White said, would love you and Ben to discuss dollar milkshake theory on Eminem. I think that'd be a fun combo. It's so cool being able to talk to Ben because, I mean, the thing that I learned very quickly talking to Ben is that, like, yes, the US and Canada have a lot in common, but like, it's not the same. It's not. I always just thought that Canada would just be the same country. You know what I mean? It's like, look, like, yeah, it's a different name, but it's the same thing. You know what I mean? But there are some major differences. And it shows how important law is, right? Because the laws are the things that really make those differences. The cultural aspect of it maybe is pretty similar, but from a legal perspective, things are very different there, and it affects everything about how Canada operates. Um, so let's see. Teo3655, how volatile or emerging markets are to headlines and what Trump is saying. Following this theory, it would be smart to put a short on emerging markets. I'm not sure that I follow fully. John316 said, Keith, is crypto good? Because I keep all my money in the space. I use no bank. I am from Canada. They freeze your bank. I'm laughing just because of the structure of those sentences, but um, I mean, funny enough that I didn't even see your comment, but I was, just talking about that a little bit and how Canada, they've got some stuff, man. And I've also heard about from people how hard it is to get your hands on crypto in places like Canada or in the United Kingdom. Now, not that it's impossible or whatever, but there's just like some extra hoops that you sometimes have to jump through. And then the idea of, getting your bank account frozen and all this other stuff. And, that happened in the US in the earlier days as well, at least regarding specifically if you were working with crypto. But I think in Canada, you guys probably got that going on and just in general. I don't know. I don't actually know. But yeah, so crypto's great. Crypto's great for that exact reason. I saw somebody say he was a lawyer, and I'm not coming at him in any way, and I'm actually super excited because I think I'm going to get to talk to him in a couple of weeks. He made this comment about like basically crypto was being used to do some fraudulent scheme, and he was like, yet again, the only use for crypto is crime. And I'm like, oh man, it's 2026. But we got to have that conversation because he's a lawyer. And so I'd love to have that conversation and hear from him what he's seen or how much of that he really believes or if he's rage baiting to some degree. Um, Crypto B Boy 6149 said the US dollar will not be on top for global South countries. Now that they have already been not using US dollars, they are only using dollars if they have to, but it's not the same. Times are changing. Fair enough. Fair enough. Cryptonomics, right? Precious metals would be my first go-to for wealth preservation, not a foreign currency. LOL. Yeah, I get that. I totally get that. Yeah. Um, yeah, it's just a matter of like the way that you're structuring your life, because gold is something that if you, for instance, have physically, you can't transport it. You know what I'm saying? So in this case of once again, if you're trying to have multiple passports and trying to get somewhere, that's something to keep in mind because if you try to bring some gold bars to the airport, you might get, you might have some problems. Once again, great use case for crypto. Let's see. Wes, he said, I need to figure out what midnight is supposed to do and why Charles is always yelling. Gotta be for a reason. That's hilarious. Charles Hoskinson is often yelling. He is, and it was he's got a lot of people that are saying all kind of crazy stuff, and he's doing some really important things for honestly potentially humanity, definitely for the world of finances, and he cares. He definitely cares. Midnight to me, once again, guys, I'm like a little bit biased because I only looked at it because they came on the podcast. But when I started looking at it before I had the conversation with the president of the Midnight Foundation, I was like, this is a pretty interesting concept. And it has something that can be applied at scale on an enterprise level. Okay, there's just so many blockchains that are not meant to be integrated with how things work today. And that's the thing that I think is just, I think it's myopic to think that there's hundreds of thousands of cryptocurrency projects and that the one that you like the most, the one blockchain that you like the most, is going to be the thing that people use because it's technologically superior in whatever way. But that also ends up being dogma. That also ends up being religion because there's a trilemma. What do you care more about? What is technological superiority? Is it speed? Is it security? Is it decentralization? You see why picking a blockchain as like the thing that's going to rule the world and take over money is it's just you know, there's so much more that you can do with DLT than just use it as a money, period. And that's why Bitcoin is fantastic because first off, it does have a unique feature in that it's the proof of work. It was the first iteration. It's got legacy. It's got decentralization. It's got security in ways that nothing else has. But there are other uses for distributed ledger technology. And what Midnight is doing is interesting because I can see how what they're doing could be integrated into the Googles of the world, into the Amazons of the world, into the Metas of the world. And that is something that is important to me now to specifically understand why I think that. Part of the architecture of what they're building has what's built into it called this selective disclosure. The biggest problem with the adoption of blockchain technology is technically, I guess, twofold. Privacy, you've got privacy and you've got transparency, right? You're trying to constantly balance that. Foreign nations can't really use Bitcoin as like their standard money system because what happens is, and by the way, in Bitcoin is not supposed to be used in that way, to be clear. But Bitcoin can't be used that way because it's too transparent. You can see everything on chain. So if a country starts to move money around, if they start to do deals with somebody on chain, if they did it on chain, they could do it off chain. Don't get me wrong. But if they did it on chain, and oh man, I love that conversation. If they do it on chain, then they're revealing information that could be sensitive information that could lead to people dying, right? So, point being, when you have mission critical use cases of this technology, it can't be fully transparent. But then again, you might not want it to be overly private. You might not be able to use Monero. The US government's not going to use Monero. They need to be able to follow a trail internally, but not have that be something that's revealed externally or to the whole world, projecting what they're doing with their money. No. Selective disclosure would allow for you to be able to choose what part of your transaction is made public or which of your transactions are made public. And so you continue to maintain a record, but you only disclose pieces of what it is that you wanted to reveal. And that's what Midnight enables. And that's some powerful stuff. So Wes, hopefully my yelling also helps to answer that question to some degree. All right. Simper Crayon said, I've been carrying around a stick lately and I found I have better ideas. Thanks for the tip. Word up. Welcome to the stick carrying team. Okay. What is the so-called pizza theory? Art 9252. I have no idea. I have no idea. Cryptonomics 7. Every smart contract project I have seen has either been a scam, hacked, or non-functional. See scam/hack. They do not work as many projects say they do. I've yet to see any. Most run by humans control. Okay, fair. I think when we talk about smart contracts, there's a broader piece of that conversation, right? Like there's a completely autonomous organization. Okay, you've got decentralized autonomous organizations, and then you've got varying levels of how autonomous they actually are. But then there's the question of just a smart contract, which is just a piece of code. It's just code that you can use to execute something. You're telling me that Uniswap just doesn't work? I mean, Uniswap works. it allows you to first off put up liquidity into a liquidity pool, and it also allows you, because of those liquidity pools, to trade on an automated market maker. So you can trade in and out of any type of an asset that you want on Uniswap because of the fact that there are smart contracts that are enabling that use case. So I think maybe when you look at like DeFi in general, there's a lot of stuff that's gone wrong. There's a lot of stuff that's gone wrong, but there's a lot of stuff that's actually gone pretty well. When you look at projects like Aave or Compound that have gone pretty smoothly over time. And those are smart contract enabled platforms. So I don't know if that's, yeah, I don't know what the difference in what you may have been saying versus what hopefully I was able to say there. Crypto B-boy, Western European countries especially will remain using dollars and euro, including South and Central America countries, excluding Brazil. Word up on that opinion there. Jay Measy said, my youth is similar to my boy or youngster, depending on who is saying it. Okay, 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 okay. Gotcha. Hadn't heard that. I didn't know what it actually meant. Jukes 007, smart contracts have been exploited. Yes, there are some smart contracts that have been exploited. That is correct. Yeah, Cryptonomics, Canada is technically run by the crown. Hey, I found that out during, I think it was during the Trudeau campaign or something. I realized, I was like, wait a minute, I didn't even know that. They are under the crown. I will say that they're a part of the Commonwealth in the UK, so that people who don't know can now know. I remember learning about that concept of the Commonwealth, and I was like, man, what? BMW K67 said, no, it doesn't. LOL. Ute equals youth, which makes sense. That sounds like that aligns with what they were saying. What's the yield on Bitcoin? Asking for a friend. Well, this depends on what you mean by that. All right, let me see. Sharp 24/7. I know the lawyer. LMAO. Fingers crossed. Yeah. Hopefully we get him. All right, Crypto B boy. He says he's got to do his coding course. Take care. Yes, sir. Get to it. Teo 3655. It's funny to think with laws in the US that you're more likely to serve time for dealing substances than for fraud. Man, ain't that the truth? I'm going to water cell. I'm going to be a gold car, like in the Goldfinger movie, to move my gold. LOL. He's gonna build a gold car. Teo 3655. Teo 3655 said, Jukes tap into air fryer coin, bro. Trust. I ain't never heard of that one, Teo. That's crazy. Julian Cerulean said, you can fly with under $10,000 of gold without declaring it. More if you declare it, but you risk having it seized. Oof. Imagine that, dude. I'd be mad, man. You know what? But heard. I just imagine that if they see gold in your bags, they're gonna be like, nah. But I don't know, because I haven't actually done that. And I'm sure, I mean, people do it, you know what I mean? So Timoth US Cloud said, the conversation should be how I imagine blockchain, you're saying, how it blockchain introduces truth to finance. This how it can wreck Congress and all matters. This is the use for immutable ledger, or am I mistaken? Well, listen, that would be a great use of the immutable ledger, but I don't know that that's how it's gonna be used, right? That'd be a great use for it. Let me tell you, it definitely enables that type of reality. The question is that how we're going to see things play out? Well, the problem is you've got to get the system to agree to that. You've got to get Congress to agree to that. And what congressperson wants that to happen, right? Teo 3655, you're crazy. Said might be I'm trolling back to learning. Yeah, 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 you're funny, man. I saw the trollery. Tim Grease said, I have two Caleb and Brown accounts, one in personal and one in LLC. Only downside is their fees. They need to enhance their self trading platform and lower fees. Thanks for the feedback. We appreciate you voicing that. Yes, that's a cool thing about them as well. As you can also use them for your, you can use them as a treasury for your company as well. So, West Pole, if they have the option to do it off chain, why would they do anything on chain? If they have the option to do it off chain, why would they do anything on chain? That's a good question, brother. That's a good question. And you never know how things are going to go. That's all I got to say. Um, Kelly White, this selective disclosure discussion on midnight is fascinating. We need more like this. Totally, totally. I mean, I think it's a really fun conversation. It was nice talking to Fami, and I'd love to talk to him again. And the thing about having the guest on Memes and Markets the first time is like it's a little bit more formal because it's like, hey, like we literally don't know each other. Like, be respectful and like take the time and this and that and make sure we make the most of the time. But once we get people like that on again, there's so much more just like ideating and brainstorming and stuff that we could probably do together there too. Because I mean, there's so much coolness about what that can enable. Cole BP44 said, "What I'm gathering from you is to put 100% of my net worth into Dogecoin." Wow, that's a crazy takeaway. I'm not gonna lie, that's crazy. Yeah, no financial advice given around here. I'm not a financial advisor, and I'm a guy talking to a wall today. Let's see. Let's see. Cryptonomics 7 said Uniswap works, but that is super basic level in terms of what smart contracts have promised to the crypto space. That's more of my take. Smart contracts have been around for a long time with no advances. That I understand. Totally. Totally, totally, totally. New World Operating System said just got here, so I am late. You're super late. Super late. Kelly White, what chain token projects would governments want to use and why? I think that's an important conversation to have. Lots of use cases to explore depending on the type of government agency. Yes, I totally agree with that. And that's why, I mean, nowadays we've got some things that are in the public, such as Chainlink and their collaboration with the DTCC, the Depository Trust and Clearing Corporation, which we've talked about quite a bit on this channel. So hopefully you've seen that one. Johan Flores 667. I'm late to. What did we miss? Oh, you missed it all. You missed it all. The tribe said, fun fact, blockchain oracles become a single point of failure for smart contracts. Interesting. Interesting. The whole point of the decentralized oracle is that it is also decentralized, right? So now that's a whole conversation. That's a whole conversation. And when I say that, that would mean that there is no one particular singular failure source because there are multiple different sources of the information. Or, yeah. So I'm Boss 2047. Do you make beats or ever tried producing music? Brother, that's in my blood. I do it. I've been doing it since I was an adolescent, very much so. And I will be doing more and more of it. In fact, some of you guys have heard my music and have no idea that you have, because I sprinkle it in. That's my. I feel so cool about that. I'm like it's like a psyop. It's like you guys have no idea, but you've been listening to my music this whole time. Whoa. No, not on this channel. Not on this channel as much. Have you guys seen any of that? New World Operating System. Where is he interacting with the chat? Right here. Right here. Cross Central. A lot of people don't know that these blockchains use a centralized RPC call for data on chain, like Infura and Alchemy. I do hear that. I do hear that. Yeah. Yeah. So, how do I? Some people don't know these blockchains use a centralized RPC. Yeah. So essentially, guys, like a lot of the blockchain applications that you're going to use, they don't really spin up their own nodes. And instead, they use nodes of these infrastructure companies like Infura, I think is the one that he mentioned here in Alchemy. So they basically, Infura and Alchemy, what they do is they run a bunch of nodes for several different blockchains. And so if you want to build an app on a blockchain, you don't have to spin up your own node. Instead, you just go to them. It's kind of like cloud. It's like cloud computing, but specifically for blockchains, right? So if you want to build a website, you don't have to go out and build your own server. You just use Amazon cloud services. And that's kind of what these inferior companies do. And so because of that, right, you have centralization of these servers because there are these companies that are essentially acting like cloud service providers. And I think that's the point that Cross Central is making. With Cross Central, that's a very insightful thing to share with everyone. So I appreciate that. The tribe said blockchains ideally are trustless, but not necessarily truth. I love that. I love that, the tribe. That is a really important distinction. I love that. That's a really good point. And what that means, right? Let me try to trustless. You can have a trustless system where I don't have to trust you, but the things that are supposed to happen are going to happen regardless. But that doesn't mean that we're not lying. That doesn't mean that there's no lie occurring. That doesn't mean that there's no input that's coming into that system that's not objective truth. An example would be a decentralized Oracle system or an Oracle period. So you have a smart contract that says that when Ethereum hits this price, you and I are going to trade Ethereum for US dollars. But if the data around what the price of Ethereum is wrong, then guess what? We have a trustless interaction where I don't have to trust you with the data because the data's there, it's there, it's autonomously working, but that doesn't mean that there's a truth of the data. So very, very powerful thought there, the tribe. I appreciate you sharing that. And this is the thing that makes blockchain also very hard to implement because in reality, you can have a trusted system, but you still need to find a way to verify what the actual truth is. Okay, and that's not easy because coming to consensus about what the truth is a whole different thing. People don't agree upon the truth. There is not necessarily always a particular source of truth. Okay. Now, that's like a philosophical discussion, but there's also, a more logical, rational reason for things in finance can be true, right? And in those types of worlds. Eden Kovacic, 2761. Do you think Cardano is overhyped or interesting long term? I'm not a huge understander or observer of Cardano. I love Midnight. I'll leave that there. The tribe. Imagine the dystopia of an HOA run by a DAO. Yeah, that'd be interesting. That'd be interesting. Do you have an opinion on SoFi, good or bad take? I actually don't. I've never used it. A hand of Sambor. Thank you so much for the super chat. He said, "Look, Lockman got you. Bit is better because Gov is bad. Bitcoin is better because the government is bad." That's what I'm thinking you're saying there. Word. Fortitude 18. SoFi is really ramping up crypto. That's why I ask about SoFi and they report Wednesday. Oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah, I haven't seen anything about them. Kelly White said, if you flipped your background so I could read the tickers, your stream would get 10 times more likes. Yeah, totally. It's just an AI background. I could probably try to fix it. What a sale. Great show, Keith. Always learn something to ponder the rest of the day. Love to all in the chat. No, I appreciate you so much for pulling up What a Sale. What a Sale is always on Memes and Markets as well. What a G. Really, really grateful for you guys. I really feel like I know you guys, and it's cool that you guys show up like that. And really, what a sale to you, because you've been around for a very long time. Yeah, so the tribe said oracles rely on input from the real world, so open to exploits. Exactly, 100%. 100%. Keith, do you like goldbacks? actually don't really actually know what that is. I know that you call it. I'll have to go back. But then I think there's like a gold offering. Yeah. I mean, look, gold. Gold is gold, folks. That's the way I look at it. Like, I don't know anything about the gold market in terms of like all the different types of collections and stuff. I just don't know anything about it. Teo 3655 Keith, do you use FL Studio? I think I guess you're only asking that because you know, but I do. BAPN Keith, do you do sync music? I don't know that I know exactly what that means, but um like like I make music that, yes, that, like, for instance, I've made intros to animations, or like the audio for animations, right, is something that I can do. Um and or like, yeah, like syncing music up to a video, right? It's not something that I've done extensively, but I do. Colby P, this is peak content to get a long walk listening to. Love it, folks. Absolutely. Get them steps in. The tribe, continuing that conversation of, he said, trustless means we need no intermeddling middlemen. Correct. Cross Central said, yes, exactly what I was getting at. That whole topic goes under the rug when talking about decentralized applications. If those RPCs fail, then you can't interact with the exchanges. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. The tribe said, trustless makes transactions with less friction, no third party, no trust in between. New World Operating System. Do you have any opinion on Simon Dixon or his model of geopolitics? What is happening? I love listening to him. I love listening to him and thinking about things from that perspective. I actually had a conversation with someone not too long ago that pointed to a similar concept. And this was more from a very, I mean, not to say that Simon Dixon is not a part of it all to some degree, but it was a very like secondhand kind of conversation from people that are extremely up there like that. So it wasn't the exact same model, but is a very similar model for how the world works, according to these people. Um, and I just find it so funny when people like I feel like if send some people some stuff like Simon Dixon, they look at me like I'm crazy. You know what I mean? But like, um, the world is crazy. The world is a crazy place. All right, I finally caught up. Amber Cole 8007. What is truth? JK. Actually, it's sad. Hmm. Harris Bueller. Do you think Trump will bail on the Iran war? Man, I hope they figure that stuff out. That's all I got to say. I don't know what it's going to look like. It's not looking good right now. BAPN said, or sync tracks. I think that's what you're saying. Is that what I described earlier, or is that not the thing? Taylor 3655, have you studied sematics and sound? Not much. No, not much, man. I took like some very basic courses on acoustics and stuff like that. Edkin Kovacic, forgot to say I love your content. That's all I wanted to say. Well, I appreciate that. I really do. New World Operating System said, in the sauna listening here. It's awesome. BAPN said, when I listen to Simon Dixon, it makes me pray because it all feels hopeless. Man, yeah, it's definitely darker stuff. But man, unfortunately, the world is kind of dark. It can be. But yeah, pray and find ways to see the good, whatever that may mean for you. You don't have to pray if you don't pray. But you might want to pray. Josh Lang. So when are we going to see shortages regarding these ships then? Yeah, I mean, honestly, right, I would have expected something to happen by now. But it's not happening here in the US, that's for sure. It's not happening here. All right, ladies and gentlemen. I've got to get running. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to close out with you guys. I really, really appreciate you all for being here. This is so much fun and it makes my Saturdays amazing. So appreciate you all for being here. I want to close out with a statement from the sponsor. As you guys know, I am partnered up with Caleb and Brown. It's a full service crypto brokerage. And you can actually speak to someone over there. You can set up, by the way, someone mentioned your personal accounts there. You can even set up an LLC account so that you can have your crypto treasury being hosted with Caleb and Brown. They have incredible custody solutions. When it comes to the centralized exchanges, they are top of the line when it comes to custody. We'll have Jim Bazzani come on next week throughout the week. I think it will be like Monday or Tuesday. I think it is Monday, Tuesday. In the evening, we're going to actually do a whole live stream together. We're going to talk about like legislation, what's going on in the world, so on and so forth. So Jim Bazzani is my contact over there. His email is in the description of this video. Go ahead and click the link in the description of this video. Go ahead and set up a free account. Verify your account so that you can actually speak to a broker. And after that, you will be good to go, honestly. So yeah, so check out Caleb Brown's free account, sign up. And then other than that, folks, wishing you an incredible rest of your day. Let me see what we got. Anastar. Keith, I'm fairly new to the markets and Bitcoin. Been watching your channel for a few months now. And I wanted to say you're very easy to listen to and you make so much sense even to the beginners. That is so nice to hear. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate it. I'm going to try to get back to being a little bit more educational because we've been doing a lot of news updates and content. I'm going to try to do my best to get back to the basics and be helpful to people in that way. But huge thanks to you all. We also have some really cool stuff going on in the background. I don't know if you guys aren't watching Memes and Markets and you don't know, but Ben and I are about to launch a product very soon. And we're super excited about it. I was actually talking about it this morning on a Twitter space. If you haven't followed me on Twitter, follow me on Twitter. And essentially just talking about some of the issues that we have in society these days around gambling and the gambling epidemic and trying to address that, right? So that's something that I'm going to be telling you guys about a little bit more going forward. And other than that, ladies and gentlemen, super grateful for you. Have an amazing rest of your day. Make today the best day of your life. And until next time,